Good morning. Today is February 4th, 2010, and we are here doing an oral history interview with Dr. Michael Nickens. My name is Jennifer Janes, and I will be conducting the interview on behalf of the George Mason Oral History Project, while Bob Bay will be running our audio-visual equipment. First of all, thank you, Dr. Nickens, so much for being here today. We're really looking forward to talking to you.
I'm honored for the invitation. Thank you.
To begin our interview, I'd like to ask you a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up? Where did you study music? And why did you begin teaching?
I was born in Washington, D.C., and both sets of my grandparents taught, three of my grandparents taught at Howard University. So my whole family is around here in D.C., Maryland, Virginia. I grew up in Alexandria, went to the public schools, Stratford Landing Elementary, Carl Sandburg Intermediate, and West Potomac High School, and was involved in the school band. So I was, as you're young, it's once a week thing, and you show up and get it partially because you're interested in playing music, and partially because you can get out of class for an hour to do something else. One of my first strongest teachers that had an impact on me was Victor Bernhard's, was my elementary and middle school director, and introduced me to Dave Porter, who was my first tuba teacher all the way through from elementary school all the way through high school. Dave Porter played 24 years in the U.S. Air Force Band, and that's one thing that's really strong about the area in terms of music education is we have access to so many professional musicians because of the military, and a lot of them spend a good amount of time teaching and being involved in the school programs. So all of those school programs I'd mentioned were strong. The bands were worth being in. I sang in the choir and participated in orchestra, so there was lots of just good learning going on, good performing going on, and it was also just the social networks and all of that. I marched in the Cadets of Bergen County, which is a drum and bugle corps, touring around. We went as far north as like Waterloo, Ontario, and I guess like Texas and Mississippi. So it's all over the place, far out as Denver. That was probably the hardest physical and mental thing I've ever done. It's people think of it, they see it and they say, "Oh, it's marching band," and it's very similar to what you'd see a marching band do, but it's probably the highest like selective thing. So I got a lot of great experiences there. Unfortunately, I got sick and wasn't able to finish the season that I was in, but still was able to get a ton from it. I started undergrad at James Madison University as a music ed major, and then transferred to Manhattan School of Music, where I finished my undergrad, and that's where I was a tuba performance major, which then spent a year teaching back at West Potomac, coaching the marching band. Did 2 years at Yale with my master's degree, came back home again, taught at West Potomac again, and then went to Ann Arbor for my doctorate at Michigan. All of the degrees are in tuba performance, but throughout them I was always working with marching bands, performing, writing, kind of a combination of conducting, writing, and performing.
So you've mentioned that you were teaching in between all of these different things. Where else did you teach, and how did you first end up at George Mason?
Okay, well, most of the teaching started because whatever school I would be at, as in peer relationships, I would end up tutoring as, whatever's going well for me, and then I would, share what was going right for me, and also just kind of enjoyed it. I remember, I guess the first time I ever conducted was in middle school. I was the middle school student conductor and got to do one piece on a couple of different concerts, and that was Vic Bernhard's, and he would talk about at that time how much of a leader I was. At that age, you don't really know one way or the other what's what, but he could recognize it and would steer me into some great opportunities that I can directly connect to what I'm doing, for a living now. Then another thing is just taking on private students, tuba students, led to euphonium students. I've had piano students, and some people come to me for help singing and for help with guitar and help with composing and music arranging, and just kind of over time, whatever it is I think I can help somebody with, I'll try to. And then Same as in undergrad. Find myself in situations even as a hired tutor, which then later led to graduate assistantships, and anywhere from just taking roll to you're going to teach these 5 classes, or whatever we talk about this topic, it's yours, or different combinations of things. I taught at Cranbrook, which is a private school outside of Detroit. Middle school through high school is what I was teaching. I think it goes all the way up through grad school. I think what it was it's a preschool up through grad school, but the band kids that I had were elementary through high school, and a couple high schools around Ann Arbor while I was there. And as I was getting ready to graduate, you look for a job. It's the reason you go get the doctorate is so that you can teach at a university, and that was the goal. And there were some opportunities around the country, and they were places I kind of didn't want to live. As I mentioned before, I went to a year at James Madison, and it is so beautiful there, and so charming, and great for summer camp. And I don't think that was just what was right for me in terms of a year-round, especially in terms of the music scene at the time. There weren't any really gigs to be had, and there wasn't really a culture for that. The music happening was whatever the students were doing in the classes. And that's fine, but nothing compared to New York City, where I passed 3 jazz clubs just getting to school, and my friends are playing in those, and playing in those clubs, and teachers are playing in the Met and New York City Ballet and the New York Phil, and I can go down and get tickets without even paying for them. You just go down and wait for intermission, and somebody's walking out with their ticket stub, and they just give it to you, and you just go in for the rest of the concert. So it was just a very different thing. So, like I said, I wanted to make sure I lived somewhere where the music scene was vibrant, and so the opportunities I had around the country weren't places that in my gut I felt like I wanted to go do. And especially as your first job, you're not gonna land. It's very rare where you're gonna land one of the top teaching jobs, possible. Although I have had friends that have done it. But it's like when I'm looking at the schools and they're asking me questions about, how am I going to fit what I do into their community and make what they're doing, enhance what they're doing, and how is it going to benefit me also, and this whole thing. And I'm looking at situations where I'm like, if you're a music student and you come to your school, and I'm not even going to mention any of those schools, but if you come to it's hard for me to say that you're going to be able to be on track. It's like, it's a very competitive field, and there aren't a whole lot of opportunities, and your personal connections matter a whole lot, and your direct experiences matter a whole lot. So if you're outside of the loop of the true pulse of where all the flow is, it's like one of the first things I'll try to teach someone is, if you're going to study music, you're in the wrong place. And that's just not good for recruiting. So, as I'm going through, I'm like really trying to think about who I am and what I believe in. And am I necessarily 100% right about that? I don't know. But I just wasn't feeling like it was the right thing. And as I said before, my whole family is here. And I'd been away 12 years by that point. And there's a point where you need to get out of the house and go. And then there's another point where you need to go home. And, I'm having a great time, getting dinners with my mother, and my sister's around, and it's just good to be here. So I remember it was Memorial Day 2006, and we were watching the Pistons. Somebody had taken a big projection screen and put it on the side of their houses up in Ann Arbor, and we're all outside in the yard watching the Pistons play. And I'm starting to kind of have this conversation with myself, because I was trying to give myself permission to just say, I don't want to go live in any of these places where these jobs are. I really just want to go home. And I had a great friend who was sitting there helping me, just asking me the right kinds of questions. And I'm just like, I just want to go home. I just want to go home. And finally I was able to say it out loud. And throughout all of the time I've been away, there are a lot of high schools in Fairfax County. They all have marching bands. And so they were a number of the schools that were hiring me to write their halftime show. So I would always come home in the summertime, bounce around, 3 or 4 schools, write their charts out, help teach it, and then hopefully come back during the season sometime, catch them in a competition, that kind of thing. So I'm thinking about that. I'm like, between teaching tuba lessons, writing these shows, and then whatever kind of like substitute teaching or whatever, I would rather be broke at home than paid to live somewhere where the only thing going on is the job, and I don't even like the area. Not fitting in with the place, and to be honest, being brown, there's some places where I can't go live, and would ask questions about that, and get some answers that I didn't want to hear. Like one real direct one was I asked, "Am I going to get lynched if I move there?" And it was met with silence, and then the answer was, "Don't go too far off campus." And I'm like, I'm going home. Like I said, I could be broke here and be fine. All my aunts and cousins, if somebody's got a bedroom for me, my mother's got a bedroom for me, I can eat 3 meals a day, somebody's going to give me a sandwich, so it's like, and all my friends that I grew up with, they're all working in restaurants, everybody's hooking everybody up and get my car fixed for free, I'm home, I'm a townie here. That's one thing I was really jealous of in Ann Arbor, is the townies, they're strong there, like that's their town. And they're very accepting of me, but I always knew, I'm kind of an adopted townie here. But boy, I go to Alexandria, and it is not like that at all. So I wanted to reconnect with that. So, which is ironic because this job is so big that I don't even get over to Old Town that much. But I was living in Delray for a minute. But anyway, when the summer, I remember the Final Four happening. It was basically just something I saw on TV. I had come here for a couple of, there were in the summertime there used to be tuba and euphonium competitions, so I would come and do those. But it was like somewhere deep that I thought this would be someplace I'd work. It was like something I was here for the competition. I look around, I'm like, oh, this would be kind of cool to be here. But it was really crazy how a small little thing I just kind of noticed while I was here, later I'm here now looking back on the things I was saying to myself then, and I am handling what I noticed. If I were here, I would do this, 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 and this. 3 years before Final Four, anything. No opportunity. This job didn't exist before I got here. They created it after the Final Four happened. So I get here, I'm here now, and I'm thinking, like I said, and like I already had, it was already in motion before. So anyway, I keep talking about this, keep jumping back and forth. Memorial Day, I give myself permission to come home. So I make the plans to come home, get in touch with some of my friends who are band directors. They all said, we'll keep you busy, don't worry about it. And it was like July, it's like beginning of July. And there's a listserv that, the College Music Society puts out a listserv of jobs. Here's all the openings right now. And I just opened it up one day. And I don't even think I even looked at it every month. I think sometimes I'll just get because there were no opportunities. And I just keep looking at it. I'm like, I don't want to live there. I don't want to do that. Whatever. I don't have the qualifications for that one, some of the higher ones. And then pep band director, George Mason University. I'm looking at that. I'm like, it was magical. It was nothing short of magical. It was like I looked at it. I knew that was my job. I knew looking at it. There it is. And even as I was finishing my doctorate in tuba, some of the people on my dissertation committee would say to me, you're not going to be a tuba professor. Not because I couldn't handle the job, but because there was just other things I needed to do other than just sit in a small room with an individual and get them, making their sound better. Like, I still do that, but that's not going to be the focus. And I do enjoy kind of the larger picture and building communities and things like that. So anyway, I looked at that job and there it was. And then went back up. I had a couple weeks in my lease up in Ann Arbor. Moved home. I put my application in the middle of all that. Didn't hear a word from anybody. Moved home, and then 4 days later had this job. So here I am.